Okay, hello guys, welcome to the next module in the Finance Masterclass. So, before we get into this week's module, a quick recap on module number 4 when we spoke about financial analysis. We said this is where we really start getting impact from the foundational skills we learned in the first 3 modules. It's about how do you look at the numbers and look for a trend to give you a clue and insight about what's going on inside your business and what to do. And we spoke about looking at it in multiple different ways. We spoke about common sizing. If you remember, that's looking at it in percentage terms. And I gave you the example of how we spotted fraud in a client's business with a stationary percentage going up exponentially. We spoke about monthly averaging. We spoke about cost per unit, okay, and more. So this was about how do you look at your data side by side in order to make good business decisions. But this week, we're going to get onto the most important scorecard of all. So let me flick to it. Okay, and I've been given feedback. I'm going to move the videos up to this top of the screen. So can you guys give me just a thumbs up that you can see the keynote presentation? All right, very good. So, hey Shanaz, hey Milan. So let's get into the most important scorecard. This is the scorecard that I use whenever I buy a company, Graham, distressed acquisition. Oftentimes, in fact, I'm going to say every time a company gets in financial distress, in my experience, it correlates with its books being a mess. So if I buy a business from an administrator, so I was just looking at the weekend about a large fitness operator that's got over 100 clubs in the UK that is unfortunately gone under. And its books are choppy to say the least. But when I go in there to try and fix these businesses and turn it around, it can take so long to get everything lined up. Where do you start? And this scorecard is the most important one. As my mastermind members know well, John, it's what I know, it's what I love. It's rarely closed on my computer. And that is a 13-week cash flow forecast. What does this mean and what does it do? Well, really, the cash flow forecast is a map that allows you to see what's going to happen in the future. It shows you what's going to happen with your money and how the cash is going to flow in and out of your business. Because the problem is, when it comes to your management accounts or any kind of accounting stuff, when we spoke about the analysis last week, it doesn't work if you don't have accurate intel, right? If you've not got the right data going in, Sonia, Phil, if you've not got, if the wrong stuff has been inputted, Steve, it's going to give you misleading information. However, this cash flow forecast works a hell of a lot better than no intel at all. So this is my starting point. This, Barry, is where I go first. Jim, if I had to step into a business tomorrow, if I had to step into your business and I didn't have access to the accounts whatsoever, I would do what we're about to walk through in this module. Excuse me a second, got something in the back of my throat. I'm gonna do what we're about to discuss in this module, this cash flow forecast, because it gives you a plan of the future. I think Warren Buffett was right. I have this quote on the wall in my office: "An idiot with a plan can beat a genius without a plan." Right, and the cash flow forecast, think of it as a map. It shows you what's going on in the future in your business. So I'm going to walk you through in this module, and I haven't got rid of it yet. So let's just have an awkward silence while I drink some water.
Excellent, excellent.
Okay, thank you. So I'm going to give you an example. I'm going to walk you through exactly what to do, but who should create this? When I show you this, there's a tendency for people to immediately go, "Oh, that's numbers. I'm not going to do that. I need my accountant or financial controller or bookkeeper." Remember, these were the 3 roles you need on your financial team: accountant, controller, or bookkeeper. When we're talking about the cash flow forecast, who do we think is the person? Simon? Andy? Who is the person that should put this cash flow forecast together? I could pick on you, but I'm feeling benevolent at the moment. And I'll say it's none of the above. The person that should create your cash flow forecast, at least initially, is you. Because it gives you a feel for the business. When you create your cash flow, you know your cash flow. In fact, this often, Neelam, will give you insight into the competency level of your team. Because if you're getting very different data, if you're getting radically different data than from your own piecing together cash flow forecast, which I'm about to show you how to do, than the data that your team's giving you, Andy, that should be a little red flag. Okay, Mike, you've got to know what's going on inside of your business. So why 13 weeks? Well, very simply, 13 weeks in a quarter, and there are very few expenses that come up less frequently than quarterly. So a quarter is a good length of time. I'm not in favor of a massively long 5-year cash flow forecast. For most small businesses, it's unnecessary, and it's more done for stroking egos of, look how great, Natalie, look how much money we're going to have in 5 years' time, rather than practically having the hands-on, knowing what's going on inside of your business now. So here's a useful analogy, okay? Does Usain Bolt just turn up and run about a bit? Right, so the finest sprinter, or certainly one of, if not the finest sprinter of all time, when he was training, did he just turn up and run around? What do we think? Not a chance in hell. He had a detailed, in-depth program. He had a whole lot of professionals that their job was to optimize his training. So when you think about your business, Martin, what is it that you want? Do you want an elite athlete? Do you want your business to be an elite athlete or a couch potato? And most small businesses, the reality is, Alistair, they act like couch potatoes. John, they just sit there and they get out there and they do the work. They pay little or no attention, Graham, to the detailed stuff that needs doing in order for the business to progress to the next level. So they may have some natural talent, to stick with the athletics metaphor, and they do okay, but do they ever really reach the pinnacle? Do they ever reach elite performance? Not a chance in hell, okay? And I would think about cash flow forecasts as like having regular blood work done on your body, right? There's two types of people in this world. There are people that you can't get them to go to the doctor no matter how bad things are. You know what I mean, Sonia? Everybody knows somebody like this. Like their leg can be hanging off and they still, Alison, won't go to the doctor, okay? And then there's people at the other end that you know what? When they get that early sign, Barry, they'll nip it in the bud. They'll go, Aaron, and get a test done. And what that does is it allows you to nip stuff in the bud sooner. So on the one hand, you kind of go, it allows you to avoid significant illness or disease or anything that could kill the business, right? And nip it in the bud soon, Simon. But on the flip side, it also allows you to optimize the business's performance, okay? So how do you do it? Let's get into the nitty gritty of this now, Steve. How do you do it? So I'm going to give you, at the end of this call, if you're nice to me, I'm going to give you a template that looks like this. A simple template that allows you to lay out all the cash flow and all the different expense items in your business. But when people see this, they often go into a panic, right? And they can feel overwhelmed. Really, a cash flow forecast tells you 4 things, okay? It tells you what money you're expecting in and when, Aaron, you're expecting it to come in. And it tells you what money is due to go out and when you're expecting it to go out. At the most base level, that's it, Simon. Okay, so here's a more simplistic example, and I've shortened this to 3 weeks in order to I've lost my cursor. In order to excuse me. Oh, I'm going backwards. Okay. I've shortened it to 3 weeks to make it simple to understand. Okay. Effectively, it says, if you look at the left-hand most column, if in that week, if your bank balance started at 0 and you had 200 in and you had 4,000 out, your net cash flow, or in other words, what would happen to your bank balance would go down by £3,800, which means that your bank balance would end up being overdrawn to the tune of £3,800. But the following week, if you had £5,000 due in and only 300 due out, your net cash flow would be positive 4,700, which means your bank balance would recover to 900. Here's the point, okay? This allows you to see into the future, because the further into the future you can see obstacles, the easier it is to avoid them. So if you sit down with this simple spreadsheet template that I'm going to give you, and you map out what income you're expecting to come in, whether it be from invoices that you've already got raised, Simon, or whether it be from new sales that you're anticipating that are in the pipeline. And you also lay out the expenses that you're going to incur, because you're going to have payroll, okay? You're going to have to pay PAYE, you're going to have to make the pension contributions, you're going to have rents, you're going to have your VAT return, etc., etc. And when they're due, you can get a feel. It may not be perfect, but you can get a feel for how your cash flow is going to fluctuate. And therefore, what is going to happen to your bank balance, okay? And if you can see in the future that you're going to be overdrawn by £3,800, it gives you the chance to adjust. Think about it this way. When do most people, Barry, realize they don't have the money that they need? When do they realize they don't have the money? In fact, this is worthwhile coming out and talking to you about. Bear with me 1 second. This is what happens when I put the videos at the top. Let me move you down. Let me come out the screen share for a second. When do most businesses realize that they haven't got the money that they need? Who wants to chip in? Oh, hello, Andrew. I didn't see you there. Andrew, Alex, who'd like to contribute? Alistair? Actually, Andrew's got his hand up, so I'll go to Andrew. Andrew, when do most businesses realize they don't have the money that they need?
When it's not there.
Yeah, when it's not there. When the bill is due, right? They go, oh, I mean, it's the first of the month, so we've just had month end. Month end is very stressful, right? Yeah, Nick says when it's too late. Martin says too late. Yeah, it's when it's too late. Or I remember a very long time ago, in my earliest days in business, Andrew, I went into the bank manager and asked for an overdraft facility. So this must be nearly 20 years ago. And he said, well, but it's just after I'd learned cash flow forecasting. And he said, well, I said, how much do you need? And I said, I want to borrow £20,000. And he said, well, when do you need it? And I said, 7 weeks on Friday. And he went, really? And I showed him my cash flow forecast. And he went, oh, I thought you were going to do what most people do. And I said, what do most people do? He says, tell me they've written the check and it's about to bounce. Right? Well, that was back in the heady days when there were checks, of course. Okay. But that's exactly it. Most people have a crisis. They have a crisis because they do not have any line of sight as to what's going on with their cash flow. Okay. So getting back into this. All right. So it's easier to avoid them because the problems don't disappear just because you close your eyes. Right, Alison? Most business owners this is the ostrich defense, Jim. Okay, it's the ostrich defense. They just bury their head in the sand and hope it goes away. Facts do not cease to become facts just because you choose to ignore them. So you want to get dialed into what is going to happen. See, management accounts are in the past. We're about in the future. What's going to happen to your business so you can take the appropriate action. Okay. So I'm going to give you the template, but really in this session, I just wanted to outline the basic premises. So I'm going to give you the template and a chance to go away and work on it. I know many of you on this call already have detailed cash flow forecasts because we've been working with you in Mastermind, but some of you, this might be a totally alien concept. So we're going to dive into it and I'll pull up the spreadsheet the example spreadsheet I'll give you where appropriate in the Q&As. This Friday, the next module, we're going to talk about your financial success plan. Okay, so cash flow forecasting and your financial success plan, your budgeting, which is going to be this Friday, are the think of them as cornerstones to being able to drive your business, Phil, in the direction you want it to go. So that's where we're going this Friday. So how are we doing time-wise? Oh yeah, we're good. That was only less than 20 minutes, which is good. Let me move this out of the way. Stop the screen share. All right, so over to you. I'll get the template ready in fact, I will post it in the chat. What questions do you have? Comments, thoughts? This is the link to the spreadsheet, which I'll probably pull up on screen for some of the questions. Right, I'll have a look. Good, okay. I'll take a question, the question from Neelam first, and then I'll go open. You put them in the chat or you can unmute yourself. Neelam says, how do you build in delayed payments of invoices? Okay, so let me share the screen. Okay, so this is the spreadsheet. I can see loads of you clicked the link already. You're all at the top there. Okay, so in this example, okay, and I've got an instructions tab here, and then I've got the business cash flow forecast, and I've also given an example of a personal one, monthly, because by the way, I'm in favor of managing your money personally, not just in your business. Okay, so in this example, this top section here is cash inflows. Okay, and everything down below are just different categories of expenses. I've laid them out this particular way. You can lay them out however you'd like. You can change the descriptions in them. Away you go. But let me just play around with this template briefly. And by the way, you guys need to download a copy of this template so it doesn't screw you up. Right, so I'm going to make up an example. So this business goes overdrawn. Okay, so let's say, Baji, let's just make this a outrageously big number. Let's make this number 120,000, right? So in this example, I'm in week 3, okay? In week 3, I'm projecting my opening bank balance is 115,000. I have 55,000 come in, and I have all these expenses coming out, which total £201,000. Which means my net cash flow for the week is minus 146,000. And what that would mean, Neelam, is I'd end up being £30,000 overdrawn at the end of this week. And if you haven't got an overdraft, that's a problem. So how would you fix it? Well, you know about it 3 weeks in advance. What might you do? Well, one thing that you might do is ring up and negotiate to pay it later, or a time to pay. So you might ring up HMRC and go, listen, HMRC, because of what's been going on, I don't have all the cash right now. I can give you £40,000 now, and I can give you another £40,000 in a month's time, and another £40,000 a month after that. And lo and behold, now if you have a look at my cash flow, my bank balance is still going down that week, but I never go into a negative number. And literally, that's a great example of just a simple line of sight of going, okay, I saw that I had a problem. I was going in the red. So I looked down the expenses and figured out what could I defer in order to be able to manage that, right? And the same is true with the income. Can you get any of that money that's due to come in sooner? Same thing. So you're playing the game of, okay, how do I use this? How do I use this to get advanced line of sight? Okay, I've now kicked you off. Oh, great question. So Graham says, how frequently do you update it? The answer is every week, every single week. So actually a great story that goes with this. So let me just see him. He's around here. So this is Keith Cunningham, who's a good friend and a mentor of mine, who first taught me cash flowing a long time ago. And he taught me, and then I realized in the business I was in at the time, it was very lumpy cash flow wise. So I had to go and borrow the money from the bank. And I took the cash flow forecast. And the bank manager said, in my 20 years of managing NatWest, this has got to be some of the best MI, stands for management information, I've ever seen, because it went on with my management accounts, right? And he approved the overdraft. And of course, because I had this cash flow forecast and I updated it every week, Graham, I noticed that I was able to avoid the obstacle. So not only did I get the overdraft, but I actually was able to get more income in and defer some expenses and reduce some expenses, etc. So I never actually needed the darn thing, but I was able to get multiple contingency plans in place. But you've got to stay on top of it. If you try and do this infrequently, it's a nightmare and it doesn't really work. Think of it this way. When my daughter, oh yeah, she's just over here. When my eldest daughter was born, she was in intensive care. She needed emergency surgery at 3 days old. And in intensive care, your focus isn't on strategy, okay? It's on tactics. In intensive care, they're not focused on your BMI, right? They are focused on your vital signs, right? Their job is to keep you alive. First, don't let you die. And second, stabilize you, Andrew, so they can get you out of intensive care, okay? That's what this cash flow forecast does. It's keeping track of the vital signs of your business. Cash, right? So you know what's going on with your cash and cash flows. And I remember after I got through this period where I thought I'd have a cash shortage, or I was certainly very tight on cash, I went back to Keith and I said, do I need to keep maintaining this document? And he said, only if you want to maintain high levels of cash. I said, well, you don't maintain it, do you? And he went, of course I do, every single week. And I was like, yeah, but you're very rich, extremely rich. And he went, yeah. How do you think I stay that way? He's got his fingers, John, on the pulse of what's going on with his cash and cash flow. The reality is, the first time you do this, it might take you an hour or two, a couple of hours to set it up. But depending on the size of your business, I mean, this can be maintained for 20, 30 minutes a week, right? For most of you, 20, 30 minutes a week, but it keeps you dialed into the most important things, right? It stops things like accounts receivable derailing, because you've got to keep going back and looking at it. It nips it in the bud so your business works well and you don't have financial, I don't know why I was avoiding swearing, financial clusterfucks. It's just an absolute nightmare, okay? It avoids it from happening because you stay dialed in. So every week, Graham, without fail. How much time should we spend creating the forecast? Yeah, good. The first time it might take you a couple of hours, 2-3 hours, okay? But I'm a fan of the Pareto principle. I think you should have the first pass of this done in under 30 minutes. Thinking about the biggest expenses, the biggest amount of money that's due to come in, you know, the biggest invoices, the biggest expenses that are going to go out, putting in the bank balances. I mean, that stuff can be done lightning-like speed. I'm not bothered if I'm going to, you know, if my invoice to my stationery supplier is due this Friday or the Friday after. It's not that big a deal. It's the big stuff. Start first. So you're better off starting with that really ugly, simplistic one that I gave you know, like the 3 weeks, money in, money out. Like if you start with that, you would just get more dialed in and proficient over time. This is something that as soon as the coronavirus hit, I was immediately onto the mastermind members. We actually did a slightly more advanced version of this, but we were immediately onto our mastermind members and said, right, it is mandatory that you get this done. We need to get this done and we need to get it updated. Now, most of them already had a version of it, but we did it more in depth because you've got to stabilize the patient, stabilize your business, stop it bleeding cash. Okay, Nick says, if I set up my accountancy, can he set up KPIs in some kind of tables like this? And can these tables be visualized with graphics or any online tool, perhaps? So the short answer to your question, Nick, is yes. I'm sure he can. Any accountant can do this, but I come back to the point. Staying dialed into your cash flow, you don't get a pass. And it'd be very unwise for you not to have a crack. Sorry, let me take that back. The value is in the thinking. In fact, I've just realized, I think I missed a slide out of this slide deck. 1 second. Oh no, that must be my next one. The one that's coming up on Friday. The value is in the thought process that goes behind it. The thinking of staying dialed in. If an accountant prepares this for you, I'm just going to say waste of time. Waste of time. Now, don't get me wrong. If you're really that scared of it and you want them to hold your hand in setting it up for the first time, right? Like doing it, you're doing it with them. Great. Good. I can support that. But if you get them to do it, you're missing the point. The point is about you being dialed in about, oh, okay, this customer. It's very tactical. These customers, it's due in, it's when, oh, okay, what invoice? Oh, what's in our sales pipeline? This is the stuff that gets you clued up and dialed into your business, right? And by the way, if it was easy, you would have done it already, right? But the beauty is, and anybody, and there'll be a few people on here that do this stuff diligently. I hope you're one of those people, Bev, and you too, Martin. And you too, Nikki, right? That are doing this diligently, they'll tell you once you get dialed in on it, you can maintain it very easily. Okay, it's training the muscle. Okay, Simon, do you use a spreadsheet or is it easy to do it using Xero or similar? I only ever do it using a spreadsheet because you can do cash flows in Xero, which is accounting software for those that don't know, but I'm not a fan of it because it's more cumbersome. I like having it in a spreadsheet. Oh, I'm not sharing my screen now. I was gonna say like this. I like having it in a spreadsheet like this because it's easy to play around with. Like, it's me thinking on paper. Simon, this is me externalizing what's going on in the business on paper so I can see it. I can see the future and I can make plans accordingly. So again, if you're driving a car, okay, think about it this way. If you're driving a car, in fact, yeah, I'll tell it this way, and then I'll avoid the slightly more morbid metaphor that I heard this morning on a podcast that I thought was brilliant. But if you're driving a car and you see an animal, a dog, run out in the road 200 meters into the future, you can either slow down or take the evasive action. It's easy because you've got a line of sight. If it's dark and it's foggy, okay, and you only get 2 meters worth of notice, it's much more painful to take and dangerous to take the evasive action, right? So this is giving you a line of sight for what's going on in your business. So Nick says, but this means in addition to every transaction being categorized into Xero, then every transaction needs to be put into cash flow. Very time consuming, but from what you're saying, worth it. How far ahead do you go? I guess you can put standing orders into the spreadsheet so they appear every month. Okay, so here's how I would think about it. First of all, anything that's in your accounting software is normally the click of a button, it can be exported. So I would argue against that it needs to be inputted twice. However, personally, I do input it twice, or the bookkeeper inputs it for the business, and I've got my rough estimates, right? And now, for transparency, I don't actually do the data input on most of my cash flow forecasts. I look at them every week and play around with them, but it's actually my assistant that kind of inputs that data manually. So it is extra input, but it keeps her conscious. Think of it as a check and balance. I don't think it's time consuming, but because if it's every week, it's nominal. It's minutes. It's not even hours. It's minutes. But I think it's worth it for the check and balance to keep you sane. And I go a quarter ahead. And by the way, important point for everybody, if I don't have an invoice, but I know I'm going to have the expense, I put an estimate. Because people go, oh my God, I can't put the VAT number in there because I don't know how much my VAT is due. Estimate it. Okay. And if you're not sure, estimate high, right? I'm willing to bet it's not going to be more than 20% of your revenues, right? So think of it as a safety net. It's predicting the future and it gives you margin for error. Okay. Yeah, from Nikki says, an account can set up the mechanics of it. Only you, the owner, knows the assumptions you're making. Yeah, great summary, Nikki. Great turn of phrase. I don't even think an accountant needs to set up the mechanics of it. Guys, it's a fucking spreadsheet with a few with cash in, cash out, and then the change in your bank balance. And I'm giving you the spreadsheet. It's in the link. Okay. It'll do the formulas. It's just plus and minus, right? It's not complicated. But Nikki's right that the assumptions, that debt's going to be bad, or they're going to pay you late, or that this bill's due, but you haven't got an invoice for it yet. The accountant doesn't know if there's no piece of paper where you know that Steve always invoices late or whatever. So you can put in an estimate for that, or you're going to buy that bit of equipment then, right? So you've got to be dialed in. Simon says, thinking about 3 accounts, would you show debits for tax and profit on here? Would you consider borrowing from the profit account for short-term cash flow rather than arranging loans and overdrafts? Okay. So there's 2 questions. So we're talking about the in a previous module, I think it was module 3, and the provisioning and the different bank accounts. Would you show debits for putting money into the tax and profits accounts on here? The answer is yes, I would. So see, the cash flow forecast is for one bank account, your main operating bank account. So if money leaves that bank account and has gone somewhere else, great. I would debit it. And if you had a problem, so second point is, if you had a problem, would you consider borrowing from the profit account for short-term cash flow rather than arranging loans or overdrafts? I'll answer the question, but it's a bad question. Yes, I would use my own money rather than doing loans and overdrafts. I would, because that would be cheaper. However, there are other things that I would do if I saw there's going to be a cash flow shortage that comes before dipping into my own profit account. Okay. And that would be there's 5 levers for operating cash flow. Can we increase sales? Can we decrease expenses? Can we decrease accounts receivable, i.e. get the money we're owed in sooner? Can we increase accounts payable, ask some people to give us better terms and pay later? And can we decrease stock? So we need to repurchase less stock. I would look at those 5 things before I dipped into my profit account, but then I probably would consider using that ahead of borrowing money. Although the bounce back loans are pretty darn attractive. Okay, Mike says, I love my cash flow forecast. Yeah, you've become a fan recently. Yeah, Nikki says Xero has a budget function. Yeah, but spreadsheet does give you more flexibility to play with. I agree. Martin says we created a COVID-19 version to determine the D-Day for all clients. That's funny, Martin. I did an almost identical thing. It was an amber. I did a RAG system, a red, amber, green type one with all my clients. Their job was to push out the date that they were going to run out of money through loans, furlough negotiation, etc. Yeah, it keeps to alive in the business. This is the oxygen. We really miss it if it's not there. Yeah, 100%. Nick, yes, you can ask a face-to-face question. So, God, you guys are piling on questions quicker than I can answer them. So, Nick, yeah, wherever you are, unmute yourself and ask away.
Hi, Dan.
Hello.
Hello. So I've got, for my business expenses and personal expenses across the whole year, what I've done is added everything up, every single subscription and cost, everything. Total for the year, divided by 48 weeks, and that's my weekly amount to earn after tax, and then 4 weeks off, where I don't have to earn anything, right? So I've got this very specific number per week to hit. So I guess that's a type of static cash flow, really. Perhaps I can convert that entire spreadsheet into an all-encompassing cash flow, which includes all food transactions for personal and Netflix subscription and everything. It'll be a bit more detailed than what you're talking about, but I mean, that would be the ultimate way of doing it, wouldn't it? Surely include absolutely everything.
Well, let me tell you. So the answer is yes, but let me tell you a story. Okay, let me take you back whenever it is 12 years, whatever, to the fall of Lehman Brothers. Okay, Nick, in this metaphor, you are Lehman Brothers. Okay, or rather, my concern.
I'm Dick Fuld.
There's no substitute for the tactical in and out. I don't like doing averages and guesstimates. I mean, I would say the best diet is one you can stick to. I'll take anything over nothing, any kind of cash flow over nothing. But for me, I'd rather be really granular for the next month, for the next 4 weeks, and then extend that to 6 weeks and 8, rather than using averages out for the year. Here's why. Okay. In the 2008 kind of financial crisis, Lehman Brothers had money all around the world. And Lehman Brothers in the UK, when everybody panicked, back then there wasn't, it was a different type of recession because there was no cash. All the banks tightened, right? And there was no credit anywhere. And consequently, Lehman Brothers got found to be short of cash, okay? Because they'd lent money out, etc., and they couldn't get it back, okay? And so they had to call the administrators in. Under the law, they were insolvent, balance sheet insolvent, and they went under, okay? I forget how many years it took to unravel that mess. But after PricewaterhouseCoopers, who were the appointed administrators, wrapped it up, right? And solved everything and paid off every single creditor that Lehman Brothers in the UK had. And they charged a modest $1 billion in fees for doing this. There was still money left over. Right? There was still money left over. So effectively, you could say, well, Lehman Brothers weren't insolvent. Excuse me, I misspoke a moment ago. Their balance sheet wasn't insolvent. They had more assets than liabilities. Why did they go broke? Because of the timing of the cash in and out. That's why I don't like doing averages, because on paper, everything Lehman Brothers doing made sense, etc. It was the timing that screwed them up. All of a sudden, all the money that was due to come in didn't come in, got delayed, and they still had all these bills to go out. So they were cash flow insolvent.
Yeah.
And so averaging out over a year doesn't help you if at Christmas time, say, let's take it on a personal level, if all your children's birthdays are in December and you've got Christmas, so actually December represents 35% of your household spend, right? But you haven't balanced it right and you haven't got the reserves built up, then you end up in a world of trouble, right? Is that analogy that I'd hold to else? So yes, one for business, one for personal. Okay. All right. Thanks for that. I'm going to keep piling through these questions if it's okay. If it's okay, Nick. So let me go here. All right. Bev, all my income will come in September and October. Yeah, this is a great example, Nick. So Bev's business, because of the type of clients she works with at schools, all my income will come in September and October as my clients pay upfront for the year. Should I be spreading it over the year or just leave it in the month that arrives so that the bank balance will be true? Well, for a cash flow forecast, Bev, cash is cash. So if you're receiving the money in September, that is exactly where it should sit in your cash flow forecast. Because effectively, then you've got the remaining 11 months with which you've got to you've got to manage that cash well so that you survive till the next payday. Okay, Alex, I created the original cash flow forecast, then got our VA to update it every week, reconcile to the bank statements and identify anything missed off the forecast. Yeah, great. 8% of the legwork done and can focus on tweaking the forecast. Perfect, Alex. Great. I like everything that you've said. And just make sure that you're dialing in to make sure that if things were missed and get put back on, you know, I mean, I am overly anal about these things, but if there's a £30 subscription that you didn't put on the original forecast, but she's updating it and you're paying it every month, it's one of those things whereby you're wasting 400 quid a year just because you've not been dialed into the fact that, yeah, by the way, for everybody listening, this is where there's 10% of your expenses. If you've not done this before, you'll save 10% of the money that you're spending by doing this discipline. If you did it yourself and committed to doing it every week for the next 13 weeks, you'd save 10%. I'm telling you right now. So if you've got a business that does $1 million in revenue and 900,000 in expenses, right? I'd tell you there's 90 grand laying around. And if you do the cash flow forecast every week, you'll figure out where you're wasting that 90 grand. I've said something very potent there. Most of you are going to ignore that fact, John, but that doesn't make it not true, right? So don't tell me you haven't got money, Simon, to invest in the things you want to invest in. It's laying around there. It's just that most people, frankly, haven't got the discipline to do an hour a week. Jim says, easily the most useful financial tool I've ever learned. Good. helped us get through the last few months and forward to September. I'm adjusting 3 times a week at a minute. Good. For one of my businesses, most of my businesses were fine, but one of them was quite badly threatened by the recent crisis. And that cash flow forecast never closed on my computer. It was always live. And it's probably not every day now, but it rarely closes on my computer. Oh, yeah. Great. I'm going to show you in the next module how this works, how it ties together with budgeting on Friday. And then next week, we're going to be talking about how to use and leverage this with regards to raising finance and then also subsequently for buying other companies. Nikki says, Bev's an example of the difference between cash flow and the P&L. Cash flow shows the cash coming in when it's paid, September, October. The P&L will show the revenue across the years and the months it relates to. You're correct. That's where a client runs into difficulties. They collect the funds up front and they spend it too quickly. Martin says, we did this quarterly for a £180 million company and saved around 8 to 19% annually. There you go. In fact, Martin, this is probably worth talking about. So it's true for small business, and I said 10%. And by the way, I just want to emphasize this before I'll get Martin to chip in. I've just said on this call, if you commit to this habit, right? There's something we make our mastermind members do. If you committed to this habit for the next quarter, you'd save 10%, which over the next year, if you had £1 million business, would save you 90 to 100 grand. But it could be a lot more than 10%, right? In fact, one of my longest standing mastermind clients, a guy called Dale Allen, increased his profit from £68,000 a year to £468,000 a year just by disciplining him to find out where he was wasting money. And it was only £1 million business back then. So, right, where have we gone? Mr. Norbury.
Hello.
Hello.
Tell
us the story.
Yeah, well, context for this, we had 650 staff. So, and I took over the business when it was losing about £250,000 a month. And things like everybody having a credit card throughout the business, company cards, things like that. We had something like 35 to 40 grand a month just on credit card statements. And when you get down to this level of understanding of your business, no matter how big the business is, you can pick up constantly, because what happens at a recession, everyone closes down all their costs and then they get fat again over the period of time. Mm-hmm. And I can guarantee you most businesses up until March the 22nd or whatever were getting quite fat. Even our small business now, we've been able to cut out a huge amount of just stuff that we bought and forgot about. Right. So it's an exercise every quarter we get our clients, and we do, is to go through and try and trim just bits off, because it all goes to the bottom line. That's the key thing.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. Staying lean is paramount. And the Warren Buffett quote that many of you might have heard of. If not, I'm a Buffett baby. I'm a big fan. Is that you only get to find out who's been skinny dipping when the tide goes out, right? So like you get exposed when the tide goes out, as in the economy goes out. We go into a recession and you find out who's not been doing what they should be. Different way of saying that would be the way that you run your business in the good times dictate how well you'll survive, John, in the bad times. Okay. I've got no more questions in the chat, so over to you. Oh, we've still got a load of you on the call, so I'm going to go through you in reverse alphabetical order. So, hey, Stephen. So Stephen, Sonia, Simon, or Rachel. Any of you got any questions? If you have, go ahead and unmute yourself. Okay, I won't take it personally. So Nikki, Nick, Neelam, Martin, John, or Jim, any of you guys got any more questions or comments?
Only that completely endorse this, because I think it's very easy to, certainly the entrepreneurs that I work with for the business coaching, it's very easy for them to sort of say, oh, the accountant does it, rather than actually taking ownership. And they get so much out of a really simple cash flow forecast, because it forces them to think about what they're doing in the business. If they're going to sit and decide what assumptions are they making about what's coming in and what's going out and when, they have to decide how they're running the business. So it's a really good discipline.
Yeah, well said. I agree 100%. Nikki. So you guys, you've heard Nikki there, who's an experienced accountant, and you've heard from Martin, who is a very experienced, well-respected business coach, and also ran a very large company, as you just heard about. And these guys were endorsing, dialing into this stuff. Cash flow. It's the first one that I would do, right? Any business, I've got to get a grip on what's going on with the cash if I'm going to build. Okay, what do we get up to? So next, hi G, Graham, Bev, or Barry. Any of you guys got any comments or questions?
I've got a question now, actually, jumping back in before everybody else jumps
do.
in. Obviously, you know the business, we're estate agents. So when it comes to working out our cash flow, it's often sales we've put together, but we know there's going to be a percentage that are going to fall through. It's very difficult to predict when that cash is going to hit the bank. Something can get right to the last day when it's due to effectively exchange. It can then fall through and take another 3 months. Do we build that, our 25% into the cash flow, or do we assume it's all going to go through and then deal with the bit that isn't?
Good question. So, and by the way, right here, it's hard to give Simon a specific answer, but this is where the value is, as in it's the thinking through what's appropriate. So if in doubt, it's a slightly on the conservative side. So if so I don't know how I think about it practically in your case, because I don't know enough of the details, but I kind of go, okay, let me give a cleaner example. If somebody's due to pay me £10,000, but they all on the first of the month, but they're nearly always late, I might put it in my cash flow forecast. If they're always late by a week, I'll put it in the cash flow forecast for a week later. I might put it in for 2 weeks later on the basis that we might beat it. Okay. If I've got 10 invoices out for £10,000 each, but I know from experience that only 7 out of those 10 are going to get paid. In other words, 3 are going to fall through. I might only put in 7, right? I might only put in 7. So I'm kind of on the conservative side. So in other words, guys, I'm always looking at a slightly pessimistic what cash is expected in. And I'm also slightly pessimistic on the cash that's due out, right? So if it can be debated, should I pay them this week or that week? I'll always choose the earlier week. If I'm estimating what my tax return is going to be, I'm always going to estimate a bit high, right? Because then if you're looking at the cash flow into the future, Simon, and you see that it's like you go 20 grand negative in 6 weeks' time, you've already got a bit of margin for error built in. So you're probably going to beat it anyway, but you still want to try and beat it by playing around with the projections. It just gets you dialed in. But over time, you'll find that you're training the skill called projecting what's going to happen with your cash flow, and I find that tremendously valuable. So I probably don't worry about getting it right. If you just chose to be conservative and start the ball rolling, and then every week you update and see what actually happened, you'll find that you'll naturally get pretty dialed into what's going on.
Okay.
Does that help?
Thanks, Dan.
No worries.
Cheers.
Okay. So who have I not done? Andy, Andrew, Alison, Alex, or Aaron? There's a lot of people with their names begin with A and S on this call. Okay, good. Any question? Anybody that I missed? Because I may have missed some of the list. Any final questions before we wrap up? All right, guys. So that's it with regards to cash flow forecasting. You've got the link in the chat to get the spreadsheet to play around with it. Other than that, I will see you this Friday. Remembering, we're getting into your financial success plan. It's really now we're getting into where the rubber meets the road and how to apply this for your business. So thank you very much. Have a great week, and I will see you on Friday. Bye for now.